Musically meditated.
Musically meditated. Musically meditated.
Welcome to Musically Meditated Podcast, episode 17. Sretton, how you doing?
I'm wonderful.
The studio looks good.
You're a liar.
No, it does. Everybody, it looks really nice in here. It's coming along. There's a few 2x4s on the wall, but big
what do you think about
happening.
the 80-inch TV in here?
It looks really good. Where'd you steal that?
What do you think about the gold toilet?
It's not bad. It's not bad. But
super comfortable.
We have a special guest tonight with us. I've known this individual for at least 10 years. We haven't really hung out in a long time, but he's a buddy of mine. His name is Keith.
Hey, Joe.
How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
I know, man. We're really happy to have you on tonight. And we met through some mutual friends it's been over 10 years, but it was where I was working at the time, and being a metalhead with your friends, they were fellow metalheads, Brandon and Andrew, shout out to them, Brandon Scott and Andrew Holmes, and we would talk metal and whatnot, so we became friends, and then I started to hang out with their friends, and that's how I met you. And they would always make fun of me about liking hardcore and grindcore, but you were the one buddy in the group that liked it. So like right off the bat, we clicked, you know? So
yeah, it was nice to be able to connect with someone else without having to deal with all of their snide comments constantly about whatever it was, Hatebreed or whatever bands I like. They would give it to me pretty rough.
They would always connect like the tough guy image with hardcore, which it is annoying.
Sure.
It can be, but it's still a lot of fun. But they did have their, their little metal elite or elitist moments.
What I remember from Brandon is he would call the hardcore bands cheerleaders because the vocals to him all sounded the same. He would just go rah 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 rah.
Right.
Which is funny because some of the metal that we all like and he likes too is also really obnoxious, and to really focus in on one vocal style that he doesn't like is indicative of his personality.
Yeah, exactly. And they would make fun of me too for liking the Misfits back then. It would really make me mad, but I loved all of them. And then I would make fun of them for being big black metal guys. Like, hey, you're gonna have your gun metal belts, and you're gonna wear your corpse paint together at shows, you dorks. You know, like, you guys are gonna play Dungeons and Dragons together. Like, I'm hardcore, bro. But at any rate, yeah, it was always a good time with them. And we did go to a show together, and I want to get into that. And I remember this is going to date us, but it was July of 2007.
Yeah.
Because this happened right before 4th of July.
Right.
And I couldn't go out or anything, but we went, remember it was a big death metal festival.
It was Summer Slaughter.
Summer Slaughter,
right.
2007, and it was in like Orland Park or something, right? And who was on that bill real quick?
Decapitated, Arsis, Cephalic Carnage, a couple other bands.
Cattle Decapitation.
Cattle Decap.
Because they were the opening band.
That was the band, not opening per se, but that was the band that ended you.
It did end me.
Yeah,
it did
there was
end
a
me.
couple other kind of metalcore bands before that. But
like, Cattle Decap was like the first band before all the bands we went there to see. We all loved Cattle Decap.
Right, that was the first band we were really interested. We were excited to see.
So to go back in time at that particular time in my life, like, I just remember I was lifting a lot of weights, like a lot of weights, and I had like a pretty good size on, and I was just the strongest of my life, and I was confident. I was probably about 24 years old. And I like to have a couple cocktails, and then there's like some personal stuff, like a breakup and all this going on. So before the show, I had all those other things in my head, but I had a couple drinks, and I thought, I could hold my own, especially in the mosh pit. And we went up there together with a group of, how many were there? Like 4 or 5 of us?
It was just 3. It was me, you, and Vince.
Well, no, there was another dude.
No.
I thought. Oh no,
that was
not
us.
even enough to make a circle.
So we get up to the show, and like you said, there was a couple metalcore bands. I had a couple cocktails. I felt confident and strong. I was putting a lot up on the squat rack and the bench press and all
And
that.
squat confidence.
Yeah, right. Squat and liquid courage together, you know? So Cattle Decapitation came out, and Travis, the lead singer, is a very charismatic lead singer. He'll spit a loogie in the air as hard, like as far as he can, and then catch it with his mouth. Yeah, and then he'll like swing the mic cord around his neck. He just does crazy.
Disgusting.
Crazy. Yeah, it is disgusting, but you know, it's Cattle Decapitation.
Yeah, easily one of the most engrossing live performances that you'll see. I know that doesn't really sell it if you're not super into metal, but his performance as a lead man is pretty stellar.
Yeah, it's great. And like they're one of those bands too. They always sound better live than on the album.
Mm-hmm.
Like their album never really captures it. Besides, there was one a few years ago. It was really good. I can't remember the name of it, but
Monoliths, perhaps.
Yeah, it was awesome. But so back to the story, I go out and I start moshing, and I start really like throwing my weight around.
He's not throwing his weight around, by the way. The band starts, and I look up.
All right, yeah,
and
let's hear
Joe
Keith's story.
literally picks up a girl and throws her in the air. He just throws her on top of the crowd. And at this time, I've never moshed. You know, I've been on the edge of a pit. You know, I've never really, partaken myself. And Joe,
I don't remember doing that. I feel terrible.
He looks like an orc before battle, Lord of the Rings style, just going crazy, throwing people in the air. And I kind of lost track of him for a bit because I was more focused on the band. And then
You knew where he was because people kept flying into the air. You're like, oh, there Joe's over there.
you keep track of them. So I don't know what actually happened, but I know the aftermath. I can jump back in.
Yeah, I tore my ACL. For what I remember weird specifics of this, but I was wearing a pair of Jordans for whatever reason, and they're like low tops, and I remember the ground was really slick, but I was always wondering if somebody kicked my leg in, because if I was being a jerk like that, and like throwing people around, like that's uncalled for, you're not supposed to do that. But what I kind of remember was I was on the outside of the pit, and a bunch of people got pushed into me on the side, and my knee popped, and I remember I couldn't put any pressure on it. And the thing is I've done this before when I was playing football when I was in high school. So I knew right then and there I tore my ACL, but it was my opposite knee. And I remember I couldn't put any pressure on it, and I had to like lean against the wall to like walk to get out. I mean, it was really, really bad. And I was sitting like near the bar or whatever. And then I don't know if I saw you or Vince, but like when you saw me and you knew how bad I was, you're like, let's get out of here now. Yeah. So I appreciate that, because I felt bad because there were so many more bands coming up, you know?
I walked over, and Vince is like, oh, yeah, he blew out his knee. And I looked down, it's just sideways. And we realized, and Joe, of course, is like, just give me the keys. I'll go hang out in the car. And there's like 3 bands left to play. I think Necrophagist.
Necrophagist was there,
that's what
too.
it was. And I had gone to Summer Slaughter the week before in Kentucky, because I was just hanging out with a friend in Kentucky. And their visas got denied, and they got like stuck in Georgia, so I missed them then. And we left early, but Vince and I said, there's no way that we're just going to let you go sit in the car. So we took you home, and that was a wild one. Yeah,
I remember I just told my mom, I was like, I'm going to talk about when I blew my knee out the last time I talked to her. And she's like, oh yeah, I remember when you came home. You're like, Mom, I think I blew my knee out. And she just was washing the dishes, and she just ignored the whole statement. And then I just like sat down in the living room or whatever. And I remember it was like right before the 4th of July, and it was just a really tough time. You make some stupid decisions, especially like in your early 20s, and that was one of my biggest. So yeah, thanks for
everyone needs a good mosh pit injury story.
Yeah,
I lost my wedding ring in a mosh pit.
That's metal, bro.
When I have to tell people my like if we do like 2 truths at a lie at a teacher training, something like that, that's always my one of my truths, because no one really expects it. You're dressed in a shirt and tie, and I think it was Ringworm. I was seeing Ringworm in Chicago, and after their set ended, I kind of looked down and
Cleveland hardcore.
Yeah, right. And I'm like, oh no, it just feels. I've been married since 2013, and my ring's gone.
Your ring finger felt naked.
So these guys are like, oh, yeah, hey, man, good job getting the pit started. And I'm like, hey, I lost my wedding ring. And the guy's like, yeah, man, that was awesome. I'm like, no, my wife is not into metal. She's going to murder me.
That's not awesome.
So they like instantly start looking. And I walk over to like where the bartender is at this is the Cobra Lounge.
Oh, I remember that.
And I just say like, hey, I lost my wedding ring. And they're like, yeah, we have it. And it was as easy as that, getting it back. So
Awesome.
no
Awesome.
injury, but
that's a good story.
Yeah.
That's a good married man's story. Marriage. But at any rate, at that time, I knew you were freaked out on me after that. We did hang out a few times, but I'm sure I left a pretty weird impression. But everything was cool. But you were getting ready to go to the Ukraine.
Yeah.
So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I graduated from IU with a social studies education degree in 2017. And I was had my mind set up on joining the Peace Corps after graduation. Being a social studies teacher, not being in the sports, and knowing that I'm going to have to compete with everyone else who coaches football or basketball, and wanting to maybe do something different. I wanted to, kind of branch out. And I had a really cool professor in college who served in the Peace Corps in South America, and talked to my local recruiter, and got accepted. And I left in October, so the beginning of October of 2007, and was there for 2 years as an English as a second language teacher. I worked with a couple different clubs, environmental stuff, environmental education. I did like an HIV and AIDS awareness project while I was there. So it was a really cool opportunity. The first 3 months are just training, language training, cultural training. So 5 hours of Russian every day for the first 3 months. They say it's kind of like 2 years of college level English language training. And after that, 2 years at your site. So the first part was just about an hour and a half by bus from the capital, Kyiv. And then after that was like 18 hours east, like pretty much right on the Russian border, where there's been pretty much a civil war, like a conflict happening since the last 3 or 4 years.
Right.
Did you say what year was all this?
I was there in 2007 to 2009.
Oh, okay. I thought you said 2017 earlier.
Oh, I might have.
Yeah, 2007 to 2009. Okay.
Yeah, because I remember we kind of lost touch a little bit, but we exchanged like Gmail stuff. So I kept in touch with you a little bit, and this was probably MySpace days too. So there was some MySpace interaction.
Probably a little bit of MySpace.
But then I lost track of you for a little bit. I mean, you're in another country, and I know I've ran into you like at some shows, but I remember you were telling me too when you were in the Ukraine, like as far as music goes, you were turned on to some different music there. Yeah,
I had a site mate, which is not very common, at least in Ukraine. It was at the time it was the largest Peace Corps program. So they're just spread out. I mean, it's the second largest country in Europe. So usually there's just one person in a village or a community. And I was lucky enough to have a really, really cool site mate from Wisconsin. And he was really into hip hop. So he kind of turned me on to people like Lupe Fiasco, whom I've never heard before. And
forgot about him.
Yeah, and then that was kind of like my reintroduction. If I really liked, Jurassic 5 in high school, college, he kind of got me
them too.
He kind of got me back into hip hop. There was a couple other people, someone in my language cluster who was really into folk, Americana, that kind of stuff, and he turned me on to a couple really good singer-songwriters. Jeffrey Folkalt, a guy from Wisconsin, like if you know Townes Van Zandt, the lesser-known Bob Dylan.
Yeah,
he's kind of like a modern-day Townes Van Zandt. I think very poetic, kind of dark. So it was able to kind of branch out and find a lot of other music by dint of the other volunteers I was with.
But let's cut to the chase. You introduced him to some really good metal, though, didn't you?
Yeah. There's a couple of...
all that stuff's awesome, but
does he have a blown ACL story that you were involved in?
You didn't see any dudes blow their ACL over in the Ukraine and mosh pit, did you?
Yeah, I did a couple lessons where I did vocabulary with, music tempo, and we would listen to, a variety of genres, and they would have to describe it and, build around English language and vocabulary. And then, I kind of let the students know that I was in the metal. And to them, they really liked in Ukraine and Russia, like Iron Maiden, like that kind of, like big singing vocals, melodic is really popular. Not so much, death metal and black metal.
Yeah.
The grim
but the power metal and the show and it's
Scorpions.
Yeah. Oh,
they're
huge.
From Germany. I mean.
So those sort of bands they kind of really liked, but not so much what I had to offer as much. But we were able still to connect, and a lot of times you just get like a weird look when you play something in class, and really students are kind of confused by it.
That's what I always like. Like you would send me pictures and stuff, like, and I like on Gmail or whatnot, but like it would be Keith like in a Ukrainian village, but like with a behemoth T-shirt on, or like a pig destroyer,
Right.
T-shirt, or like something really grim, or like a black metal T-shirt. I was like, yes, like spread the metal, spread it.
I was out at a hostel like all the way west, and I happened to run into some other volunteers that I knew there. And while we were there was also a group of people from Sweden, and we were just talking to them, and they speak like 9 languages, of course, so their English is better than mine. And I asked them where they're from, and they say they're from Gothenburg. And I'm like, oh, what a great, amazing metal scene there. And another volunteer who I had already known for a year and a half at that point, from me saying Gothenburg, goes, wait, do you like metal? And then I go, wait, do you like metal? And we started talking about In Flames and At the Gates and all these bands. And I find out he was like in a death metal band in the 90s, like with his friends, and I think maybe a brother in like California called Body Pit. So
That's
of course
a cool name.
he just sends me his his demo. He shares that with me, just kind of old Suffocation, kind of just good old school death metal.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so he kind of made some connections with people. Another guy was in a band that Steve Austin from Today Is the Day recorded him, and they toured with like Tragedy. They did a show with Botch, and
Botch.
yeah, he was. So it was nice to be able to find a couple people who didn't just like kind of mainstream stuff or maybe some unique artsy things, but just some good metalheads.
Right, and fast forward to now, today, you are, like you said, a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and you told me you promote metal inside the classroom.
Yeah,
I think that's awesome.
I started a metal club last year, which wasn't as successful as I had hoped. I talked my principal into allowing me to just once a month have kids in my room, and we would just listen to music, talk about subgenres, play. They could bring in music that they wanted to play. I remember being able to do that in music class in like 8th grade, and it was like the best day of the week. On Friday, everyone got to bring in a CD, and that was the class. You just sit and listen to music, even if my musical tastes in 8th grade were really terrible. So we got to do that, and the students kind of shared some stuff. I introduced them to some other bands, and just throughout the last year, it kind of each meeting dwindled, kind of dropped off with a few students. So that was a little bit of a bummer.
But it's cool. That's
yeah.
a cool teacher. I wish I had that in 8th grade. I mean, seriously.
They always say the people that have the most, everybody goes through their phases if they get into music, but you always get into music. I don't know. Music hits you on a deeper level if you get into it when you're younger, and if you have like a musical mentor. So usually that comes in the form of an older sibling. Listen to some stuff because they've already gone through the garbage. They've gotten past the bad stuff, and then they're like, you got to listen to this, and we'll move on from here. Like that movie, Almost Famous. But I don't remember if it was the girl or the guy. I don't remember the movie.
Your aura is purple. It's purple.
But to have a teacher, my brother is also a teacher, and he does the same thing. When he was teaching, he would do, and if you're playing the game, I just mentioned my brother, so take a shot. But he would put, every day he would put a different band and song on the chalkboard to have the kids like go home and listen to it.
I like that.
And then he just did that all the time. And it just, to be an influence like that, like what you're doing, to let the kids also share what they're into, but then you're like, cool, it's good that you're into this, but listen to this.
Yeah.
So it just expands their minds. Everything just, I don't know.
brings
It makes you
everybody
appreciate the music more though, too.
It brings people together. Everybody likes
It
to
does
talk
bring
about
people
music, I mean, that's what it's all about.
That's right. And I told Joe my Limp Bizkit story. He didn't tell you my Limp Bizkit story, did he?
No.
Okay, so a couple years ago, I was subbing for doing a long-term sub for an English teacher, and the kids all knew I like metal. I just drop it here and there, and usually I wait, a couple weeks into the year and let them know, and they're like, "Wait, what?" And they're just confused, and they just think it's like, I don't know, Motley Crue or something, and they all just go, "Yeah, dude," and then headbang and whatever. So they find out I like metal, and a student walks up and says, "Mr. Gough, I heard you're a metalhead," and I said, "Yeah," and she says, "Do you like Limp Bizkit?" And I said, "God, no, I don't like Limp Bizkit." And she has this very dejected look on her face and just kind of walks away. And the next year I have her again, and now I have my own classroom. It's my social studies room. And she comes in and says, "Mr. Gough, I'm really, really tired. I didn't go to bed till 5. And I look at my watch. I'm like, "That's like 4 hours ago." She's like, "Oh, I was at a concert." Like, what were you at a concert till 5 in the morning? And she said, "I saw Limp Bizkit." And I say, "Why would your parents let you go see Limp Bizkit till 5 in the morning?" And she says, well, I was with them. And I'm like, explain this to me. And she says, well, my dad is in Limp Bizkit. And as soon as she said it, thinking back, I liked Limp Bizkit when I was in, 8th grade and freshman year. And I realized, holy smokes, the name connected. And I realized I totally made fun of Limp Bizkit to a member's kid.
Yeah.
And that just made me feel awful. So he used to call her in class, and she would say, Mr. Gough, my dad's calling. And to make up for it, I would let her just go in the back of the room and just answer the phone, and he'd be calling from like California or something. So like when students would come up and ask me about something now, it's just like, oh, that's not really my cup of tea, because whatever it is, if it's kind of a metal band that's popular in the moment or whatever,
Dad could be the drummer.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so Stratton, don't make fun of Dave Matthews Band to any kids, because you never know. He hates Dave Matthews
I
Band.
love that band.
Oh, I thought you hated him.
I love him. I have a whole back piece inked. It's Dave Matthews' face.
Oh man, but no, that's cool, Keith. Like, I don't know. I love hearing that, with the kids, and promoting what you like, and like you said too, Stratton, like, that's an age, like it's usually your brother or your parents. But if you have a cool teacher, like we all remember our cool teachers, and for whatever reason you thought they were cool, but music definitely, like, hey, I know you're a cool, I'm sure you're a cool teacher. So it's like, hey, check out this band. And you did have that one picture I saw on your Instagram. It was like dry eraser board, and it was Converge Jane Doe. So
yeah.
Kudos to that.
I had a
awesome.
Misery Index flag in my classroom for a while, but
that's pretty intense.
My wife kind of like talked me into taking it down. Like, maybe you shouldn't have this here.
Maybe take that Misery Index flag down.
Yeah, I took that one. It was hanging over the windows because I had one from like a flag of Ukraine, and then a couple flags from like Colonial Williamsburg, and then Misery Index. So the death metal flag came down.
It came down.
Maybe eventually I'll put it back up.
All right, cool. Let's transition into what we want to do tonight, and this is definitely a metal episode, and I respect Keith's opinion. And what we're going to do is go through different genres in extreme metal, and we're going to talk about the albums that you should check out, the listener, if you're not into this particular type of music. So, some of mine are old school, but it's the stuff that I loved when I was younger, and I still love to this day. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to start with death metal. And Keith, what's your first album for death metal that you would?
So first, I'll say that a lot of the bands that I got to, whether it's death metal or other genres of extreme metal, perhaps aren't like the traditional what everyone thinks of, like the old school death metal. Because when I first heard, say, Corpse or Deicide, I thought like, it's not very accessible. I couldn't really get into it too much. So I had to find some other bands that maybe had, I won't say a gimmick, but perhaps did that, but with a twist. There was something different about it. So I'll just kind of go through my list. The first one I just have is, I used to save my lunch money in high school, and then, at the end of the week, buy CDs, and then still trade CDs with friends. That was even in college, I was still trading albums. But I have Opeth's Blackwater Park, progressive, melodic, and because of that, without it being, grim production, without it being too abrasive, that was one that really opened up my taste to some other things.
Yeah, Opeth is one of those bands, in my opinion, are collectively as a group the best musicians you could listen to, especially in a metal, in a metal setting. And I'm ticked off because I've never gotten to see them live.
Same here.
And I really want to. Blackwater.
Do they still tour?
Oh yeah. What country? They're Swedish, right?
They're Swedish, but they've since kind of like switched gears into more of a straight like progressive rock band, which is still really talented, but it's just not so much what I'm into.
Yeah.
So I've kind of fallen off at the last at least two albums.
Me too. There was the one that looked like a tree and it got a lot of love, but I didn't care for it.
I think Heritage.
Is that Heritage? Yeah, it's Heritage. It looks like a family tree, but like Blackwater Park. When I first checked them out, it was Orchid. And that, the thing about Opeth, in my opinion, like you said, they mix so many different types of metal. Like they have folk, like the singer can sing. Right. And what was the one all acoustic album?
It's either Damnation or Deliverance. I always switch up with which one it is.
That is, you can go to bed to it. And they always mixed in that acoustic and almost kind of a folk sound too. But Blackwater Park that's a great album in general, like So good call on that. But Opeth is a great place to start because it'll turn you on to. They got elements of black metal,
jazz.
Mm-hmm. Like even like I said, a little bit of folk. Wouldn't you say?
Oh,
it's
for
folk?
sure.
Yeah, and then the singer's just awesome. But what else you got on your list there?
I also have Soylent Green, who is a band that I don't think gets enough credit. Ben has gone on to be
Ben Flaugust,
more successful with Goat Whore. A band that
I love Goat Whore.
I appreciate, but I don't necessarily like go out of my way. I see Stratton laughing at me.
These band names.
Yeah, I admit it's a pretty tongue in cheek.
I had a Goat Whore sticker on my old Ford Ranger.
Nice.
It was huge,
So
dude. It just said Goat Whore.
People knew not to try to hijack you.
Probably
just based.
I
off
just
of,
put that vibe out there. Goat Whore. What is Goat Whore? I don't know.
I'm not going to find out. I'm going to leave this
I'm just
guy
gonna
alone.
leave this guy alone.
So Soylent Green is the singer of Goat Whore's old grindy death metal band, which has just a huge Southern sludge influence. And the first thing that I took away from them is when you hit play on one of their songs. So I have Stone Mouth Secrets, and it doesn't repeat. When they start a song, you almost never hear a lyrical pattern or a riff or any construction in the song repeat. It's just A to Z, something different every 15 seconds, which is really unusual. And I never heard that in a band before, for them to completely throw out songwriting basics and their groove, their grind. They're really brutal at times. And he's just an amazing, amazing metal vocalist.
He is. He's great. I got to see them live with Cattle Decapitation and 6 Feet Under in like 2004, and they were cool. They like hung, like they let us go, not backstage, but back room. You know, I mean, this is death metal, and we hung out, and they were really cool guys. And not to get off a track, like, but Chris Barnes obviously is the singer for 6 Feet Under and Cannibal Corpse, and we were on the side of the stage, and like we were by his girlfriend, so they were like performing. And like he was getting jealous, and he'd look at it. It was like me, Wallace, and this dude Johnny B. And he'd look, and he's like,
I'm going to go blow out that guy's knee.
"Yeah, I'm gonna go blow out that guy's knee." He's like mean mugging us, and I'm like kind of looking at the ground. I'm just a little kid, and then like the next thing I know, he tells his security guy, and they threw Wallace out of the show. So Wallace was ticked off. But Soylent Green is awesome. Soul Mouse Secrets, I think. I don't know. I remember we traded T-shirts or something back in the day. Did I trade you that one? Like you
No.
gave me like a Converge one. I remember.
I don't think that was me.
Okay.
That might have been Andrew.
It might have been Andrew.
Because there was a point where I had a bunch of shirts, and then I lost a ton of weight in college. So then I gave Andrew a bunch of shirts. So he might have given you like if it was a Jane Doe shirt, that might have come from him.
Okay. But yeah, I love Soylent Green, and good call on his vocals. Like remember, like he had like a cane and shit like for a while. Remember? Mm-hmm. I don't know what happened to him, but yeah, they're awesome. They're from New Orleans, and you could hear that in their sound.
Southern riffs,
Riffs, and like some good blues. Love Soylent Green. Good call, dude. What else you got?
I would say The Crown, Swedish death metal, very thrashy. If you imagine almost Metallica's Kill 'Em All, just like hopped up and just insane and played at 200 beats per minute. Hell Is Here, which I know a lot of people who like other albums of theirs more, Death Race King.
That's the one I remember.
And
Yeah.
the best thing about Hell Is Here is it literally is just a fiery pentagram with a hand that has the metal horns on it, which, I mean, it's like pretty much you had an 8th grader design, an 8th grader just got into metal design, but it's perfect.
It is perfect.
And on the back, they're all in leather. They're all wearing leather, studded belts, studded jackets and stuff. But it's an incredible album. It's super thrashy. It's really melodic. It's got great solos. The lyrics are almost bad. They're so metal that it's kind of corny, but still in a very fun way. And I think that's a band that's not really gotten the credit that they deserve, especially with a lot of the other Swedish bands becoming really popular. I know they're releasing a new album in this year, and I'm looking forward to that. I think the last couple ones have been kind of, hit or miss. Like, I'd rather have a bad Crown album than no album. But that's a band that I really think, if it turned me on to metal, and I didn't really care for, like I said, Corpse and Deicide and, the kind of traditional Morbid Angel stuff when I first got into metal. That one kind of was able to kind of get me in through the back door.
Cool. I always remember the drumming was tight.
Oh, yeah.
for the crown.
Really thrashy, really
Real
fast.
thrash, fast. And what was that album you said that?
That's Hell Is Here.
Okay, Hell Is Here. Yeah, for sure. And then what else do you got there for?
I know. Well, I know we both have Cryptopsy, so if you want, we can.
Yeah, let's collaborate on that.
Yeah, transition.
You go ahead, and then I'll get in there.
And so it's funny. I think a couple bands that when I first heard, I could think of at least 3 bands that I bought their album for like $15 at Borders in 1989 or 1999 or 2000, and just imagine how much money that would be today. And buying an album, never hearing it, and then realizing, oh no, I hate this. I don't like this at all. And that's a couple bands that I first heard I didn't really like. When I first heard Death's Sound of Perseverance, that's one of probably my favorite death metal album of all time.
They're growing on me now in my 30s.
Yeah, melodic death metal, I would say, not traditional like old school death metal. First time I heard it, I just couldn't get past the vocals and traded away.
Chuck's vocals, it's just...
Came back to it, and then now I can listen to that album every single day. And that's the same thing with Cryptopsy. I bought it, traded it away for Pig Destroyer's Prowler in the Yard.
Shame on you, but they're both great albums.
No, I got
They're really good albums, both of those. But
well, I eventually got it back, of course.
Thank
So I have them both now. But that is just that's not an intro album, I would say, for death metal. That one's going to probably take a little bit of working up to, because of the vocal style is so erratic. It's so abrasive. The album is so fast. If you're a musician, you'll probably appreciate the technicality and the melody and the speed at which things are played. But it's one that you definitely have to kind of build up to.
Yeah, it's abrasive. It's a bitter pill to swallow. However, the drumming by Flo is amazing. The bass playing by Eric Langlois, I think that's how you say his name. I mean, these dudes are all from France, by the way. They're not France, but they're French-Canadian.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, French-Canadian. His bass playing is amazing on that album. It's the first time he joined the band, because they had a different dude on Blasphemy Made Flesh. And then the guitar playing is just, it's technical, it's awesome, but the vocals, that's what I remember when I first heard it too. My buddy Ricky, he just passed away, rest in peace, but he showed it to me, and he was kind of like shoving it down my throat. I was like, dude, those vocals, but like Ricky was able to point out, he's like, read the lyrics. He's like, I'm going to give you the CD, read the lyrics, and the thing, the singer is Lord Worm, and his lyrics are poetic. And not only that, he is a college professor. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's a college professor. In where are they from? Quebec?
Yeah, it's from French Canada.
Yeah, they're French Canadian, but yeah, Lord Worm is a French professor, and his lyrics are poetic. They're awesome. And Ricky's like, yeah, just check out the lyrics. Check out the lyrics, dude. They're really good. And I did, and it's like, I don't know. It's just a very well written album, lyrically, musically. It's brutal, but if you can get into that, you can get into anything as far as brutality goes. And one other thing, I did get to see this album performed in its entirety at the Metro in Chicago when Lord Worm came back. What was it? What was that album? Once Upon a... I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He came back, like Lord Worm was on the first 2 albums, and then he left, and then he came back like... in 2007, we'll look it up.
Once Was Not.
Once Was Not. Thank you. Yeah, Once Was Not. But that's what they did. They played None So Vile in its entirety, and then they played like one extra track, and it was Mutant Christ, and I think that was on Blasphemy Made Flesh, and it was just an awesome show. And I love Cryptopsy, especially the Lord Worm era.
What's great about that Cryptopsy album is it's a whole package. The artwork.
John the Baptist, it's that infamous picture or painting of John the Baptist's head on a platter. Like, that's the album cover. And like you said,
the audio samples from, like, I think it's Exorcist 3.
Exorcist 3. And don't they have some Evil Dead ones on there too? Or is that Blasphemy Made Flesh?
I don't remember.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, everything about the packaging and the sound, it's an amazing album. So I totally agree with you. So
what if that we have in common? What else do you have on yours?
I have, that is what we have the most in common. My number one album you got to check out if you want to get into death metal or you're just exploring is The Bleeding by Cannibal Corpse. Mm-hmm. That album, the best way I could describe it, it sounds, and I read this somewhere, so it's not mine, but Corpse, and especially that album, they have this sound of like a train off track or derailing, and it's fast, but it keeps going, like the momentum of Cannibal Corpse, and especially on that album, it's just like, anxiety filled, but I love the vocals, by Chris Barnes on that. I love the lyrical content. It's like watching a horror movie. And then Jack Owen, on guitar, and then Rob Barrett's on there too. He's in Malevolent Creation, and I think he's back in Cannibal Corpse now. Like their guitar playing together with that is just the best. And Strip, Raped, and Strangled is one of the best death metal songs of all time. Like we used to always dog Paul, the drummer, when we were younger, but going back, like he's not that bad. He gets the job done. And the production, like, their earlier stuff, like Eaten Back to Flesh, Butchered at Birth, even Tomb of the Mutilated. Like Tomb of the Mutilated, Scott Burns was finding his production sound, but the Bleeding, you could really pick every instrument out, and especially the bass by Alex Webster. And like that was a really, really, influential album for me to like pick up the bass and try to do technical stuff, because he wrote basically all their songs, but you could really pick out the bass because the bass is a harder thing to pick out.
So is that the first Corpse album you got into, or did you hear others before that, and then this one really kind of blew you away?
I think I heard Tomb of the Mutilated first, and then got into everything like at one time, and that one just blew me away, because I love Chris Barnes' era Corpse. Like it's my favorite by far. So that's just a really good introduction for death metal, and it's my favorite death metal album of all time.
Nice.
And then None So Vile's right there too, but definitely the Bleeding. I also on my list, Grotesque Blessings by Broken Hope, and that's an old school one too, and those guys are from Illinois. That was another band Buddy showed me when we were younger. This was like high school, and I don't know, everything about that too, like the song structure, the drums, like that was the first time I heard like really triggered drums, but good crisp sounding production in trigger drums. And then the guitar sound was just like really, really slick. And the bass was also there too. Like me liking bass and always being drawn to bass. Like I think every one of these bands on my list, it has like this bassy, bassy undertone to where you could pick it out. Like I think that's why with black metal at first I couldn't really get into it as much.
A little more trebly.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, just
buzzy.
More treble. But like with these particular death metal albums, you could really feel the thickness, So yeah, Broken Hope, Grotesque Blessings, you got to check that out. Rest in peace, Joe Paciek. He was the original vocalist, and his vocals on that album were awesome. And that was like one death metal album too, where when I was younger, I tried to read the lyrics and go along with it, and you could distinguish it. Like going back to None So Vile by Cryptopsy, you mentioned it too, like the vocals were hard to deal with because Lord Worm is doing all like lows, but it sounds like he's barking like a dog almost.
Right.
But he has something to say, but you can't necessarily make it out. But with Joe on Grotesque Blessings, you can make it out, So Broken Hope, Grotesque Blessings is awesome. Another one on my list is Domination by Morbid Angel. It's just a classic, I mean, even Beavis and Butthead made fun of that,
Yeah.
right? I think it was on the Beavis and Butthead
right.
show, like Bow to Me. I don't know. Yeah, I think Bow to Me was on that, or maybe it was on Covenant. I mean, there's so like with these bands, there's a lot of good albums, but Domination, like Where the Slime Live, like that was the first time I ever heard double bass like that by Pete. Like his drums were great, and then Trey, the guitarist, like he's just a awesome guitarist. It's just a really good introductory level song, or not song, but album by Morbid Angel. You got to check it out. Do you like Morbid Angel?
Oh yeah. Again, that's one of the bands that I've kind of had to work backwards to. So I wasn't able to come in with their back catalog and be real familiar and grow with each album. I've kind of had to work from the newest and back and kind of make my own opinions. So it's definitely as maybe sinful as it is a death metal band I'm less familiar with. But I just bought. I just found a couple albums of theirs at Disc Replay because I still buy CDs.
Which ones were they, if you don't mind me asking?
I got Covenant.
It's classic.
Yeah, and Altars.
Altars. That's like see, like they had like a thrashy black metal thing. They're another one that like they were experimenting with their sound, and that's awesome because a band like Morbid Angel like turned me on to different thrash and some black metal. Like they had that black leather, evil vibe about them. So I love them, and they came out with an album last year that was really.
I've not heard
decent.
it yet. I hear it's a good return because the album before was panned for being too experimental. but I've not heard the newest one yet.
Yeah, they always did the alphabet. Like every album started with the alphabet, letter from the alphabet. And they lost me around Gateways. So they lost me around the G album. But two more, and I couldn't. They're actually both EPs, but Despise the Sun by Suffocation. That's just a classic go-to, and Dave Colross is on that. He's playing drums. Remember, he was in Malevolent Creation. I think he did some stuff with Gorgasm. But that is just a really, really good meat and potatoes death metal album. You got to get that. Like me and like certain friends of mine, like we've looked for it, to buy it on vinyl, and you just can't find it. It's probably only been pressed like 50 times. Great one. And then another EP is by Dying Fetus, Grotesque Impalement.
That's old. That's some of the earliest stuff, right?
Yeah, it's like 99, but that's right when Tally joined.
Okay.
And his drumming's amazing. And then they did a lot of covers on that. Like, I forget what bands they're covering, but, with Gallagher and the Grooves, like, that's Dying Fetus. They just have the best death metal grooves out there. And I mean, even their last album they just came out with last year, like Wrong One to Mess With. I'll just call it that. keeping it, clean on the show.
For the kids.
For the kids, like, because the kids got to get some Dying Fetus albums for sure. But, yeah, that was a good album. So, yeah, got to check those out. Now, let's get into some grindcore real quick. What do you got for your grindcore albums?
Easily number one is Prowler in the Yard, Pig Destroyer. I mean, that's a band, even with not being open and kind of having some closed doors to the extreme music I listened to in high school. That's something that completely blew me away the first moment I heard it. And I had never heard anything like it, from the samples to the opening, the audio, the lyrics, the artwork. It was just something that I instantly, as soon as I heard it, a friend had a copy, and I'm like, I have to get this. I have to buy this.
It's on my list too. I mean, I didn't put these in any particular order, but it's definitely up there. And I do have it on vinyl, and it's really cool. It's Oxblood.
Nice.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing too. Like, I was talking about the death metal stuff with the thickness, and I was always like trying to pick out the bass a little bit more. Pig Destroyer does not have a bass player. It's just a drummer, guitarist, and vocalist. And
on that album, at least.
On that album.
They do now.
Do they?
Yeah. Adam Jarvis, who is the drummer of Misery Index.
Yeah.
And Pig Destroyer now, it's like his cousin. It's a
really?
Someone he's related to. They have the sample guy.
I remember the sample guy when he got included.
And they're gonna have a bass player in their newer album.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. But what I was getting at is with Scott Hull's guitar playing, he was like a master of production and guitar sound. So they didn't really have to have a bass player because it was just so chunky monkey, and the guitar tone for that.
Sorry.
The guitar tone for that album is just sick. Like, like my one friend Zach Gasia, like him and I would talk about it all the time, and like we really dug into the history, and then like Zach looked into like his cabinet and all kinds of Nerd Alert stuff. Like we're looking into it because that guitar tone is just it's.
Yeah, it's
brutal.
unmatched. You don't need a bass on that album.
No, you don't.
It's unnecessary.
And then J.R. Hayes, his vocals, are cool because it's kind of it's going between different genres. Like, he was never a dude to do cookie cutter or, Cookie Monster vocals. Like, it's all hardcore sounding type of vocals. Yeah. But then the actual lyrical content, it's just insane. And it's poetic, and it's probably one of the best written albums ever.
Death metal, grindcore, Charles Bukowski, just
that's a good,
awful, murderous love letter breakup kind of stuff, but just through a really dark, disturbing lens. I saw them at Dark Lord Day when they played in 2013. I had to get tickets because I thought, geez, I've been listening to this band since 2001, 2002, and the fact that they're coming to in Northwest Indiana and playing, I have to get tickets, and got right up front, and like the whole set, I was just screaming "Naked Trees," which is my my favorite song from them, and of course, like the whole time I'm just screaming it, and then they finally close. I'm not saying it's because of me, but they closed with "Naked Trees," and it was pretty unreal. Yeah.
It is badass. I did get to see them. I want to say it was like 2004, and I don't know if it was the Cobra Lounge or wherever it was, but it was a place in Chicago, and it was like...
That's a while ago.
It was a long time ago. It was like when Terrifier came out.
Okay.
So yeah, that was like 2004, right? And we went there, and they had like a beam in the middle of like where everything was at. It was one of those kind of shows, like the support foundation beam for the show. And Brutal Truth, it was like Brutal Truth's first show in a long time, and just in general. But I remember I threw down really hard. Like I was like, I gotta show up for Pig Destroyer, and I was going pretty hard. And this guy was dressed up like a clown, and he tried to punch me like with a palm. Yeah, it was
Nick Cage tried to con air you.
But it was a great show. Like he did try to con air me. He was like dressed like a clown. He was just being annoying in the pit, and like he came around and we just like pushed him, and then he just came at me and jumped up and like totally tried to tiger palm me. He's like, "What is that?" So I just that's a whole other story. But it was a really good show.
Threw him on top of the pit.
Yeah, he was a little guy, but
they tour so rarely. So that was when
like,
I was willing to pay extra money to get tickets for that, knowing that if they play 5 shows a year, that's a lot for them.
It is, and it was like I remember I was so pumped up for it. I saw J.R. Hayes before he went on. And I was like, I was like serious, like don't let me down tonight. He's like, okay, dude. He just kind of like at me. It's like you owe this to me, But no, it was a great show, and that's a good call. What about any other grindcore? What do you got?
Yeah, I have Human 2.0 as well, from Nazem, and that's the band. Like if Pig Destroyer kind of like got my attention, Nazem definitely kept it. I think because of their anger, that's very audible and present in their sound and their lyrics. It's political, it's social. There's groove, there's melody, there's great samples. I think all of those things kind of come together to make just a staccato burst of 30 to 40 second songs, but it all fits together in a way that I think is a lot harder than you would imagine writing songs that are so short and so fast.
Yeah, that's on my list too. A lot of people would like Inhale Exhale by Nazem, which is also an awesome grindcore album to check out. However, Human 2.0, that's the only grindcore album I've ever heard production like that. Mm-hmm. Like it's super clean, but in a good way, because a lot of grind is just dirty, nasty, not the best, But with that, they were able to keep it dirty and nasty, but super clean at the same time. And that guitar tone is the best. And that guitar tone, you know what that is? It's an old school heavy metal boss pedal, so not the Metal Zone, but it's called heavy metal, and that is that Swedish grindcore sound. Like, and what you do is you turn every knob all the way up, and that's the Nazem,
the chunk,
that rotten sound, that guitar tone. That's it. So good call. What else you got?
We both had Cephalic Carnage as well. Okay. And it's funny, the first time, again, going back to trading albums, I traded this Exploiting Dysfunction with a friend, Brandon. I don't remember what it was. And I just, it's like baseball cards. You just like, yeah, I'll give you one of these for that. And so I look at the artwork for Cephalic Carnage, and I'm like, all right, I'll take this. And I trade them away, whatever. And we open it up and, put on the first track. And it's got that really underproduced, almost sounds like it's coming from underwater. And I thought, oh no, what have I done? So it totally tricked me there. And then, of course, it just kind of starts in with the illicit. Yeah. And then, boom, he just punches you right in the face.
Because he has that bass. John would use that bass drop. Yeah.
And I think lyrically, it's just bizarre. It has really unusual lyrics. There's like the crazy mathematical drums. It gets weird and jazzy. It's a very unorthodox, death metal grindcore hybrid.
It's a hybrid, but that's what got me into grind. Like even like the term in general, like it was Cephalic Carnage, that album. Like in the one before too. Can't remember the name right now, but yeah, I love that. That album is awesome. I got to see them too back in the day at like Riley's Rock House. I mean, that's nice. How long ago, I think it was like right after this came out, and that was a great show. And someone was able to film John Merriman like with their camera, and it was cool. Like we had it on VHS and we'd watch him. Great drummer. But yeah, that album is just, you got to check it out. I haven't listened to it in a long time.
Same here. I think I'm going to have to go back because it's been a while.
And talking about Brandon, when you traded it with him, I remember when I first met him, like I love, Exploiting Dysfunction. And he's like, yeah, the album that just sounds like he would come up and be like, he's like, he's like, you do like bass, don't you? But like, there's just something about it, man. Yeah. That's just in the artwork. I love it. Good call.
Did you ever hear his Ramones impersonation?
No.
Oh, he would go, I'm going to listen to some Ramones, and he would go,
They would make fun of the Misfits like that too.
Yeah,
Like him and
yeah.
Andrew would come up and be like, they come up to me at work and do that. I'm like, I hate you guys. Stop making fun of the Misfits.
The best part is, even with him making fun of stuff I love, like it's also creative in his ability to single in on just something specific and kind of exploit it and make fun of it. So I have to
was fun.
tip my hat to him for that.
Yeah, to Brandon and Andrew would make fun of the Misfits, I think, a little bit more than him.
That sounds about right.
What else do you have on your list?
For grind, I also have, let's see, I guess maybe also a blend of death metal as well, but Terrorizer and World Downfall.
Okay.
I think Terrorizer is a super influential. I think a band that probably gets maybe credit from the people familiar with extreme music, but that album, which is like, I want to say late 80s, and then when they came back and released another album in the 2000s, was just destruction. It was, incredible. And that's, I want to say Pete Sandoval, right?
Is it?
I think the drummer
From Morbid Angel. He's in that group?
That sounds familiar
I'm
to
not
me.
too familiar with him. I mean, I
Don't quote me,
Okay.
internet nerds, music
Yeah.
nerds, if you were
Yeah.
fact checking me right now.
yeah, please don't. But yeah, I know who they are. I've listened to them. Not that familiar, but for grind, the name Terrorizer. It's always there.
Yeah.
Now, as far as grindcore goes, we've hit the same bands, which is really cool. But I have to throw D-Knock out there because you and we knew about D-Knock, and they're definitely not very American.
I remember you gave me like
Their splits, all their splits.
you put everything on like one CDR in like 2006 or so for me, and
yeah.
it had like 97 songs or something on one CDR, and I think you wrote out, you even like Sharpied the label to kind of like look at like their logo to make it even more authentic and DIYs or DIY.
DIY style. Yeah, it was from all their 7 inches. They only released 7 inches forever, and then their album that I really like is called Grindcore.
I have to go back and revisit. It would have been a while since I've listened to them.
They're a good mix of grindcore and power violence, and they're from Spain, and they're all about animal liberation and animal rights, and they were very, very political when it came to not messing with animals and not eating meat, and if you really dig into their stuff. But yeah, they're from Spain. Their vocals were always my most favorite, but
Kind of sounds like maybe Disrupt. It reminds me a little bit
yeah,
of
we'll Disrupt.
kind of political, socio themes.
Not the best production, but
You're right.
good old school classic grindcore.
Cool.
Let's get into hardcore real quick.
All right,
what
so
do you got?
I guess mine is a mix, because when I think of hardcore, I don't just think of like, the 80s hardcore, like the earliest inception with the Bad Brains.
I noticed that
and
with
Dead
your list,
Dead
too.
Kennedys. I mean, I love Dead Kennedys. I love the Bad Brains. I love Minor Threat. And then, 90s metal influence and Tough Guy. And there's so many different, I feel like hardcore could have perhaps the biggest variety for me. I think of not just one specific style, if that makes sense. So mine's kind of a more of, I guess, the latter bands, but With Honor, Heart Means Everything. It was on Stillborn Records, which is Jamie Josta from Hatebreed's his record label, and it's super melodic. It's
I
technical.
checked it out when you said that, yeah.
Big vocals, gang vocals, really positive. I remember them catching some flack for kind of having like, high school football coach kind of lyrics, like, you can do it, but I totally,
One more rip.
yeah. But even at like 33, I can like go for a jog, or I can just like clean my bathroom and just totally get jacked, listen to With Honor. It's just, it's like, it lifts me up. It feels like,
That's why hardcore is the best genre.
Yeah,
it's just like uplifting and
there are a few other bands that really can that I really connect with that way, to where it kind of goes straight to the gut, and that's an album that I think you don't have to like create. It's no image. There's no message. It's just positivity, and I think that's definitely something that, especially with hardcore now, I've kind of gotten away from.
Me too.
If it's with like the tough guy image, if it's like the beat down bands, I'm just not real into. I don't want to go to shows and just see a bunch of people just
beat each other up.
yeah, and it's just not my thing. So I kind of miss that early 2000s, mid 2000s positive influence of hardcore. So that one's definitely up there for on the top of my hardcore albums.
Cool, man. Like I when you sent me your list, I never checked them out. Maybe heard the name, but I liked it.
Yeah.
I did.
They had another, there's that album, and then they did another on Victory, and it was kind of more, the vocals were less early 90s hardcore scream, and more kind of punk. Still melodic, still really thoughtful lyrics, but kind of switched the vocal style some, and it's still a really good album, but just a little different.
What about Stretch Armstrong?
Oh,
See
man.
that on your list. Now, what's up with them, man? That's a cool name. I remember them back in the day. That's like mid 2000s, right?
Yeah, earlier than that.
Is it?
Yeah, a buddy of mine had like
a cool name.
A Tooth and Nail, which was like the Tooth and Nail and Solid State being like the Christian, like punk and metal record labels, and he had like a VHS tape with like 10 bands, and there was just this video, and it has one of their music videos from Rituals of Life, and as soon as I heard it, I'm like, I love this band. I love their sound. I love the same thing, the positivity. I love that that it sounds angry, but it's not angry. And it's just something very uplifting and like supportive about it. And I'd never seen, it shows like people hardcore dancing, and, so it shows people stage diving, and shows the band just going crazy on stage. And I'd never seen anything like that before. When I had gone to a show, it'd been at like, Tinley Park or something, in high school. So to see something,
that intimate setting of like almost in a gymnasium, and
that was a very
dudes.
Seeing that was a very pivotal moment in understanding and defining music and understanding what music was, and that
cool.
That really got me. That was the first, I could say, like hardcore band like that I got into. And
really,
they have a couple slip ups and some albums that are, have a couple good songs, but overall aren't very good albums. But Rituals of Life is definitely worth checking out.
Okay, cool, man. Definitely. And I see another one here, Cursed.
Oh, so this is the opposite. If you're familiar with Cursed, which I hope so.
They have one of the scariest album covers ever. What is that
The
one?
He-Goat?
If the devil exists, which I think he does, that's what he would look like?
I carved that as a jack-o'-lantern for Halloween.
You would?
It took like
awesome.
5 hours. My wife is just watching me as I'm sitting on my kitchen floor. It's
a scary
I have a
album
scalpel,
cover.
and I went through and I Sharpied it all, and I'm like carving it away. It's
Big
the
creepy
He-Goat.
smile on your face.
Yeah.
It's a creepy.
This is gonna work.
Not a lot of album
How'd it
covers
turn out?
scare me. Yeah, how did
It wasn't bad.
Yeah.
It was the first time I instead of just carving it, where you kind of shave. So you just take off layers of it. But I didn't do it in the right amount, so it was kind of uneven. So you could see some parts like a little thicker than others. But
I'm sure you're being a little hard on yourself.
You could tell what it is. I mean, you could tell what it is when you see it. So check my Instagram.
Is it on your Instagram?
Scroll back some. But yeah.
Okay, we'll scroll.
That's.
I'm gonna like it. I'll be that creep that likes your
Go back
stuff from
some.
2 years ago.
Joe's creeping on my Halloween posts. That's the opposite of the positive With Honor, Stretch Armstrong, Shai Hulud. Right?
Yeah,
This band is just so my buddy from Peace Corps that I said, who played shows with Tragedy and Botch, and I asked him, I'm like, oh, have you heard Cursed? And he's like, no. So I play it for him, and he just goes, dude, that's pissed. It's just sick sounding. It's like if you took Entombed and took that kind of like death and roll, big chunky sound, threw in like a little bit of like Converge's like unpredictability.
Yeah. They kind of sound like if you have the flu and you first throw up into the bucket on the side of your
I
bed.
love that description.
That's what they sound like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what they sound.
Another band that I love because of I feel like they really created an image, like in terms of, and I don't mean image like who they like appearance, but I mean everything that came along with their package. Their art was very stark. There's one some artwork, if it's a T-shirt or whatever else, where you can see someone just like. It looks like a ghost. It looks like a Polaroid of a ghost standing up by a window, and it gives you...
It just creeps you out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They have creepy stuff, yeah.
Totally. If you like anger, if you like kind of punk-influenced metal, totally check out Cursed, which they broke up in the early 2000s.
They have like Cursed 1, 2, and 3, right?
Yeah, there's an EP as well, and then the main guy, Chris Colahan, he's in another band called Burning Love, which is kind of more like hardcore meets like punk rock, and another band called Sect, which is with Andrew Hurley from Fall Out Boy. It's like a vegan straight edge, vegan straight edge hardcore band.
Cool. I'll have to check them out. I haven't heard of. How do you say it again?
Sect.
Here you go, Shretton.
Why me?
I don't know. It kind of goes with your name in my head for some reason right now. All right.
It's like all different letters except for the first one.
Just the S, dude. It's just the S. All right. Modern Life is War. I love Modern Life is War. This album's awesome. It has the song Dead Ramones on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was a band that when I first heard, I thought, like, you can't write a song like this. You can't write a song for a minute and then just stop and then go into another song. Again, another band that completely threw out, the norms for songwriting, and mid-tempoed, melodic, it kind of builds and builds and builds. And it took me a while to kind of get into them, but once I did, it kind of, I got hooked.
That album in particular has that I don't want to say live jam band punk vibe, but it does, because like you said, the songs all go together. Like it's an album that just all blends together very well. Like it just, they have that sound, and there's something about, especially that era of them, like that album, where they have like the vocalist. I know they're from Iowa, so maybe we can relate because we're Midwestern dudes, but they have like a sorrow about them.
Oh yeah. Very kind of almost Rust Belt, I think, of like just industry that's died. They've been left behind. There's nothing, and there's just very desolate, kind of hopeless. If Cormac McCarthy, were in a hardcore band,
it would be Modern Life is War.
It would be Modern Life is War for sure.
They had this great T-shirt a few years ago, and here's for the drinking, like you said, the drinking game. It was Morrissey. It was Morrissey like smoking a cigarette, and then it just said "Modern Life was War" behind it. I thought it was a great T-shirt. But I love them. I love Fever Hunting. That's my favorite album by them.
Oh yeah, I didn't really like. I can't the
just
third album.
Well,
whatever the third album was for Modern Life is War, I didn't really care for too much.
Okay.
It had a couple good songs. It had like that. Never mind the Sex Pistols. To edit our language here.
Okay.
That just I thought was mostly a miss. I was glad that they released a new one, but Fever Hunting came out, and that's a really great album.
They were blending some like shoegazy stuff there a little bit, but
layers of sound for sure.
Yeah, layers of sound, and it was on Death Wish, which I like the artwork. I think Jacob Bannon from Converge and Death Wish had something to do with it, but. Good call on Modern Life is War. I love it.
What else is on your hardcore?
On my hardcore list, it's probably cliche. I've talked about it before on past episodes, but the total package, everything about it, is Converge Jane Doe.
Yeah.
I could go on for hours about that.
I probably left it off only because I knew you would probably going to talk about it.
I know it's there on your list too.
Oh, for sure.
Also, You Fail Me by Converge is a really good hardcore album to check out. It's kind of forgotten.
Yeah, I think
a little bit.
That's the last one. I after You Fail Me, I kind of fell off some, and I didn't listen a ton. And then finally, I kind of got back into and finally checked out their last album, and I kind of was like, all right. When I listened like 3-4 times in a row and just started again and again, I was like, all right, yeah, this is pretty good. But yeah, No Heroes. I mean, I enjoy. I don't go back and revisit.
That's Converged by the Numbers. I like Axe to Fall.
I don't think it's bad.
I'm a fanboy.
I just don't go out of my way to listen to it. But the first time I heard Jane Doe, a buddy bought it at Borders. And we're like driving around in Cherville. We're going to like Fazoli's or something. And it's, high school Friday, just wiling out, being crazy kids, buying hardcore albums. And he put it on. And I remember being at a stoplight on 41, and we had our windows down in my Oldsmobile, and my windows were down. My windows are, the stereo's turned up, and there's like this old couple next to us, and the album just starts. And the vocals kick in, and I had never heard it before, and I felt embarrassed.
That's when you know it's good.
I felt like, oh no, these old people, what are they thinking is coming from over here? So I didn't like it when I first heard it, and that was another band that took me a while to like
digest,
really absorb, to digest and to absorb, and try to get past the sensation and to get past the unfamiliarity of kind of abrasiveness of unnatural sounds and music to really take in what they were doing. And I mean, it's timeless, so you can listen to that.
It's great. Like I got into that when I was, backtrack to Exploiting Dysfunction by Cephalic, like, so I was just a sponge and I was really happy with how they were blending so many different styles. I mean, Converge is a hardcore band, but that album is the best hardcore album in my opinion because they mix so many different genres, and the package is perfect, and the lyrics are so relatable at any particular time. I mean, it's a breakup album, you know, it really is when you look into the lyrics, you know, and like it could be when you lost, you know, like when you broke up with your girlfriend in middle school or, you know, or in adulthood, you know, like there's just something about it that just always resonates with me, and I love that album. So it's definitely number one. Poison the Well, Opposite of December. That was really big for me. That was like late 90s, early 2000s.
I want to say, 98, 99.
And Poison the Well, like I knew of Converge. I had Jane Doe, but it was one of those you would get so much music from friends or whatever, but I did get the Hellfest DVD.
Oh, yeah.
And Converge was on there. But I got it because Poison the Well was on there.
Sure.
But Opposite of December is a classic. Nerdy's my favorite song, but they were always really good to mix some melodic stuff in there as well.
That's a bit like that's an album I've gone back and I just don't enjoy as much anymore.
I haven't listened to it in years, but I was just like really thinking of like,
what got you into other stuff?
Got me into other stuff, but in hardcore, like if you want to get into hardcore, I think that's a great stepping stone. Vision. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's got some really some cool, chunky, big.
They were all about breakdowns,
Yeah.
like open chord breakdowns then.
But not even just like all right, move it side to side. I want to see everyone destroy this place. Not like those kind of breakdowns, but just almost more metal, more. It
was like a little bit more melodic.
Yeah.
Metalcore. I mean, and so is Jane Doe to a certain extent. So, you know, it is what it is. But Vision and Disorder is another one too. Still is their first EP, and then their self-titled album, which was on Roadrunner. But that's when like hardcore really, really grabbed me by the grapes. And I love Vision and Disorder. Now, if you look back at this, like they kind of got caught up with the 90s pimpcore kind of thing going on with the baggy clothes, but that was the time, that was the era. I really like Imprint too. You know, they were still on Roadrunner, but they kind of went a different direction with that, but I like it. It's noisy. Like I know Phil from Pantera was really promoting it back in the day. I love that album. Mm-hmm. The guitar structure is amazing, but their self-titled album, it's got like a green drop on it. That's really, really important hardcore for me. Like when I was younger, and everybody should check it out. And then, like I said, the Still LP is amazing. You know, they're from Long Island, so it's New York hardcore.
Yeah. And
then I'll move right into Earth Crisis. How do you say that? Gomorrahs?
Oh, Gomorrah?
Gomorrah, thank you.
Yeah, like Sodom and Gomorrah.
Okay, yeah, Gomorrah Season Ends.
Yeah.
That's the first hardcore I ever heard, so I can't get over it, and everybody needs to hear that album. And it's about the vocals and the song structure and everything.
Is that when you mentioned, I think you brought up the Ozfest?
I did. With when Andy was here from This Podcast is Garbage. Like I had...
That was when I first heard him too.
Was it Ozfest? Yeah, it was that Ozfest CD. I don't know, it was like 97 or 98, but... They had like it's on YouTube, those performances, because I had to check it out again, you know. But yeah, Earth Crisis, that particular album, and then Destroy the Machines. That's a classic hardcore album. Mm-hmm. Got to check it out. And then I have Willhaven in here too. Willhaven and Earth Crisis were like the first bands I ever heard that were vegan and animal rights, like pro animal rights, like when you really dug into the lyrics, which I really thought was cool, and I'd never heard anything like that when I was younger.
Yeah.
And back to Earth Crisis real quick, they were the first straight edge band I've ever heard of. Like I never knew anything about straight edge, but they brought that to the forefront, and I think that's a really, really cool thing.
Expose people to different ideas.
Understand where they're coming from. Yeah, especially when you're younger. Mm-hmm. But Willhaven, self-titled, got to check that out. And then I have to finish my hardcore list with Minor Threat, the first 2 7-inches, and then especially Out of Step. I mean, it's old school, but without Minor Threat, you would not have hardcore. And then also, and obviously, Bad Brains, Band in DC. You can't beat that, you know. So it's a go-to. It's always a go-to.
Yeah, I've been excited to hear how much you talk about Bad Brains, and I think it's reflected in the podcast because of how positive it is. You know,
it is.
You
it's
guys
always
don't,
about the PMA, man.
If you don't like a band, you don't you don't rag on them. You're not angry. You're not bashing bands, and that's what I like, that you kind of focus on what you what brings you joy rather than what you don't like, which is cool.
Who's got time for that? But I love Bad Brains. What about another genre on your list for metal?
I guess we can talk about some black metal.
Yeah, let's not forget the old Blackened Days.
So again, a lot of my albums kind of are around the corner. So like, it was going and finding a genre through maybe the not obvious choices, because I would get, you buy an album from Century Media, and then you would get the list of, all the other bands you could find. And I would go on like mp3.com and download a song in like an hour and a half to find out what these other bands sound like. So a lot of it isn't like, traditionally starting at what everyone says you should start at with black metal. So one of the first that I got was Borknagar's Archaic Course, which is a really unorthodox black metal album, because it's so entrenched in kind of weird folk, weird melodies. It's got some grim vocals. It's got some fast parts, but it's not just a straight scathing, like start to stop, just brutal black metal album. But that's one that I feel like if, you've heard Dark Funeral, or you've heard Marduk or something, it kind of turns you off. I think Borknagar is definitely, the early stuff is something that can...
It's a pill that can dissolve slowly.
I like that description.
Slowly in your satanic belly. But yeah, for sure. Who else you got? Because our black metal lists are different, but I think we're both on the same page with that particular genre. Like, I'm still getting into it now.
Yeah.
Because I hated it when I was young, because you had to either be like a death metal dude or a black metal dude.
You can be both.
You can.
It's like Metallica and Megadeth.
Okay.
You could only like one when you were younger, and now, for sure. No, I agree.
Thanks to bands like Dissection, because they were more of a death black thing.
Sure.
Goat Whore, like we mentioned earlier. There was elements of black metal and Soylent Green too, so thanks to a lot of those bands, and Morbid Angel, and can I say was there a little black metal in Cryptopsy?
Yeah, they have. He uses his Lord Worm's high vocals.
Yeah,
he does his
kinda,
shrieks.
Yeah, but what else you got there on the blacklist?
Immortal, At the Heart of Winter. I mean, you can't live in the region. You can't experience winter without listening to this one.
That's when I always listen to black metal. Is during the winter.
For sure.
It is. It's got to be grim. It's got to be cold.
It's kind of got its thrashiness. It's got its melody. It's got Abbot's kind of signature. I thought he was a robot the first time I heard it, and I thought, there's no way this is an actual band. Like, they just have a robot singing for them. So that was another, something that kind of took a little bit to get used to, but same thing, like the artwork is insanely perfectly signature metal, and the lyrics are all about, nature, and it's like the black metal that I can appreciate and not have to hide that I listen to.
Yeah. You don't want to burn a church when you listen to
right.
it.
You could have your windows rolled down in the intersection if old people roll up.
Right, and they won't mind.
Who cares what they think? But go ahead. Who else you got here?
I also love Agalloch. I think Agalloch is probably top 5 favorite metal bands of all time. They're Pacific Northwest. Like they
I don't know anything about them.
Oh, you have to check it.
Okay.
So they've had maybe 5 or 6 full-length albums, and each one's really different. They go from having like a neo-folk, a little bit of electronic influence, to really grim production. Maybe one album's like really big, thick sound, slower, melodic. But that's a band that I think is just criminally underrated. They broke up a couple years ago, and then the main guy is kind of carried on with some side projects. But that, even with saying that, not being super into really abrasive stuff, that was a band that just, as soon as I heard like the Mantle and Pale Folklore, it completely won me over. Which is weird because I didn't hear anything else like it at the time. It wasn't like going from, say, listening to like Dying Fetus and then going into Misery Index, because there's some connection between the two bands. This was like, I'd never heard anything like it. And I felt like it was so engrossing. It was, definitely a band you got to get on your radar.
Shout out to Misery Index. We kind of forgot them on the grind
list.
And, they're more death grind, but man, are they they're just a great band.
They are.
Where do they find their drummers? Because they're always going through a different dude. Like
No, they've had Adam Jarvis for a while.
Has it been Jarvis?
Yeah, since at least Traders.
Okay.
Yeah, and maybe even Discordia, but I think at least Traders is the first album with him.
Okay.
Yeah, and they have a new album coming out this year. They are my favorite band in extreme metal. Misery Index is incredible. I appreciate and love their social commentary. Their lyrics are sarcastic and thoughtful. They're literary. The musicianship is speed. It's groove. It's death metal. It's grind. Jason Netherton is an incredible guy. He's a PhD student. He's like the historian of the death metal scene now, like documenting and recording and sharing information from all of his tours and travels. So
very cool. We got a special guest. He just walked in the door. We got Justin the Juice Wallace here from Handsome Prick. I know you're a big Misery Index fan, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I got that book.
You got that book?
Oh yeah,
that grindcore book.
The one Netherton wrote.
Yeah.
Extremity Retained.
Yeah, it's real.
What's your favorite album by them?
Oh man, I really liked the Killing Gods. I think, but their last one. But what was that? The Overthrow EP. Remember that when they still had Tally?
That was the first one.
Yeah, that's probably my all-time favorite. You know,
it was like just a little 6-track EP, right?
Yeah, that was when they were Dying Fetus Jr.
They were,
and, they're more of their own now.
Yeah,
but you were talking about them too when they did Netherton did that Asphalt Graves band. I just got that from Death Wish on vinyl the other day.
Yeah, that's on Death Wish, right?
Oh yeah,
cool.
It's real good shit, man.
Really cool. And then I know you got a couple more. You got one more black metal.
Yeah, I'll share. Let's see. Oh, Emperor. I gotta have to say Emperor. 9 Equilibrium. I'm not real into going to big shows, festivals, paying a lot of money. But I think it was 2007 when Emperor came through last. They played like 3 shows in the U.S. and that was probably the first real, other than Borknagar, the first black metal band I really got into, and I was easily threw down the $50 to see them live at the Metro, which was easily one of the best shows I've ever been to.
Really?
Yeah,
it's a bold statement. Like you mentioned, black metal is one of those genres with me too.
Hated it.
Yeah, hated it. Now I like it and I get into it. But first album is Beyond the Apocalypse by 1349. It's my favorite black metal album.
I gotta check. I know Hellfire.
Hellfire is awesome too, but there's something about Beyond the Apocalypse. I don't know. Like that's my winter black metal album I go to.
Nice.
When I feel my most grim, and I really like the drums by Frost. Like that dude is a great drummer because I know they came to this area like somewhat recently, but he wasn't drumming with them. He's in another black metal band.
Satyricon?
Yeah, Satyricon. But he's a really good drummer. Like watch his stuff on YouTube.
We seen Satyricon back in the day. Remember that?
I don't know.
What was that? No,
we've been
was
to
that
so
me
many
and you
shows
at the Oasis. Remember?
Yeah,
it was like Suffo, Morbid Angel.
Yeah, it was Morbid Angel's show.
Yeah,
and then it was Suffocation, and then Satyricon. I don't know if Frost was drumming for them then, but at any rate, I have to throw Mayhem in there. Death Crush. It's just a traditional, and I really like everything about Dead as a vocalist, and especially with the genre, and the history of it. And then Live at Lipsing, is that how you say it?
Yes.
Lipsing?
Milli
Vanilli Fest?
Yeah, something like that. But that album, Freezing Moon, like when he does his little vocal entry, it's very evil. It's very scary. And if nobody knows about Dead Olin's story, it's really intense. Wouldn't you say?
It encapsulates the black metal story.
Yeah, they set the bar for like extreme music, because I always thought black metal was corny, like when we were younger. But then you read that story, like
that K-Bar evil,
We are so evil,
right? But I mean, when you kill yourself and then your band member collects your brains and your skull pieces and puts them on a necklace, and then they burn down churches, that is extreme.
Yeah,
and that's Mayhem. So shout out to Mayhem.
High five.
High five. My other black metal album is by Marduk, Plague Angel, 7 Angels, 7 Trumpets. That's my favorite black metal song of all time. And that song is
Throne of Rats. Is that on
Throne of Rats? I think that's on there too. One. But 7 Angels, 7 Trumpets is about Armageddon and when Satan was thrown from heaven down to earth, and that's probably what it sounded like when that happened. So
I'm falling and I can't get up.
yeah, little shout out to that album. And
Yeah, I had Panzer Division.
Panzer Division.
Yeah, Panzer Division Marduk. That album is just because there's no keyboard, there's no symphony, there's no
That's
kind
not
of showmanship. It's
like,
just,
is that the earlier stuff? They have so many albums.
I want to say maybe late 90s. I don't
Okay.
remember the year exactly. It's before Plague Angel for sure. But just start to finish, just nonstop ripper of an album.
And let's jump into doom metal. Wallace, you can help me out on this. Now they're early, but their guitar sound is definitely doom. Melvin's Houdini.
Nice.
Oh yeah, very good.
What do you think about that? What about that guitar tone?
Oh man, it's just it's dirty, dude. That's you'd have no Kurt Cobain and all that without the Melvins and
Yeah,
Buzz. And
for sure.
That tone, man, it set the bar.
It set the bar.
You know, you have bands like Caius and stuff that came out afterwards. They're still good.
And you know what really set the bar? I mean, maybe Doom was around before it, but 4th of July by Soundgarden, I think I talked about it before on this podcast.
yeah.
But that particular song and that guitar tone
Yeah,
is Doom.
yeah,
and Doom metal.
Yeah, it's Sabbath. Sabbath created
Yeah.
the Doom thing,
Well,
and
yeah.
then you had, all these bands we're finding out about now that have that doomy element. Like remember Buffalo?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you did show me Buffalo.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
Buffalo shout out.
Oh yeah,
They're really good. That's like good old
that's
school.
like if Soundgarden didn't listen to those guys, I'll fucking kill myself. That's
Another one too, Sleep, Holy Mountain.
For sure. I have that.
That's a classic, and that's Matt Pike, right?
Yep.
Wasn't he in that group?
High on Fire.
Does he ever wear a T-shirt?
or a tank top. I did see him at Dark Lord when it was
Johnny.
like,
He's a John. Do you know him? You know who he is, right? Yeah.
Unfortunately,
High on Fire. I'm not a big fan,
All
but
right.
Sleep is awesome.
yeah, it took me a while to kind of get into High on Fire. And the first time I saw them live, that's what kind of won me over.
Okay. And then I have to probably Electric Wizard, Dope Throne. That tone, that bass tone, everything about that album is Doom to me. Like that's as good as it gets. Like the production isn't the best, but whatever. But that's Black Sabbath on like a bunch of Valium. Like for sure. That guitar tone's awesome. Have you ever listened to that album or no?
I am familiar with it, but a buddy, Charlie from New Oberfalls in Griffith, go to New Oberfalls.
I like
Yeah,
it.
he's super into Doom, super into that, and he has recommended that, but I'm not familiar with it enough to be able to.
And then Uncle Ass and the Deadbeats, Mind Control. I love that album. It has like they're not as doomy, but that album has like a 70s pop feel to it, and I love the vocals. They're really good live. Love Uncle Ass and the Deadbeats. Wallace, what's your favorite Doom album?
oh man, it's probably something by Black Sabbath, but I don't know. Pentagram's a close second.
Yeah.
I ain't hear no Pentagram going
Yeah,
on.
good call. Good call.
That's
What's the first album with just their logo?
what is that? It's got Sign of the Wolf on it.
What was my track I always liked? I
can't remember.
Born to Sin? Or the third track? I don't know. But yeah, Pentagram's like, that's really early.
Yeah.
Early.
Well, yeah, and that album you're talking about, that didn't even come out till like 80 or something, but they did it in like the 70s, I believe. Something like that. But dude, Victor Griffin, the guitar player, great tone.
And you met the singer.
Oh, Bobby
ain't it?
Liebling.
Bobby,
Oh, yeah. He was scared of me, dude. He's an old, fragile man.
Is he?
Yeah, he was like brushing his nappy hair, and I was like, hey, Bobby, let me get a picture. And he was like, oh, all right. It looked like he was going to die, but then like they went on that night.
He always looks pretty rough.
Ripped it up, man. It was great.
He was on that What's in My Bag. You ever watch that on YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah, he had some pretty
Seen
cool,
the meat puppets on there.
pretty cool grabs. But yeah, Keith, any other Doom? You're not really a Doom dude?
Yeah, I think it's a genre that maybe I need to go back and look at some of the Black Sabbath aside, obviously, some of the other bands and their influential albums, especially because when there's been the resurgence of it, at first I saw it kind of just as maybe just a temporary fickle trend. And then I realized, like, wow, it's been like 10 years that there's now this whole new wave of Doom.
You like Elder? You told
Oh,
me
yeah,
about Elder.
yeah.
They had a really good album last year.
Yeah.
Like, they're like a story. It's like reading a novel. Listen to them.
Also one of the best live bands I've ever seen. And
Really?
a buddy just turned me on to them, said, come out to the show. And that totally kind of hooked me with Elder. But if you're a musician, if you like just layers of sound, if you like noodly, but without it kind of, sound like just someone just showing off on guitar. I would say Elder definitely to check out. I also have Candlemass, the King of the Grey Islands. That's a pretty fun, kind of sludgy, slow, doomy, thick band that I think that album's another ripper.
Okay. I heard the name, but I don't ever remember listening to them.
I think they're from Sweden.
I remember the name of that album now.
Do you?
Relentless.
It's here. I'm looking at you. Look at
Yeah.
It's Relentless, and it's all your sins.
So relentless.
Yeah, dude, that's like really good. That guitar tone on that album is the best.
It destroys, dude.
It's the best.
Victor Griffin he's criminally underrated, you know.
Is he?
Great guy. Rocks that Les Paul, dude.
He does.
Oh yeah.
He does.
He's a major Christian worshiper, and you know,
That's cool.
to each his own.
To each their own. Whatever you're into, whatever floats your
But he
boat.
plays some
But he's a Christian dude in the Graham.
evil riffs.
He's
I don't
in the
get
band
it.
Yeah, it's
Pentagram.
Yeah.
That's how that usually works out, ain't it?
Nice.
I like it.
Anything else though for Doom, Keith?
That's what stood out the most. I think Sleep and
Wallace, real quick. Grindcore band, like not bands, but albums that people should check out. You're a grindcore dude. What's like your top 3 or top 5?
Handsome Prick, Anonymityville,
Plug it.
Crypt, Holy
Plug
Erotic
it.
Rapture,
Plug it. Plug
Moistened Disciples, Stop Praying, No One's Listening.
it. Plug.
I don't know, I'm like old stuff or new stuff.
Whatever. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter.
You know, I talked to you earlier, like Pigsty, The Return. You know, you got to have that. Birdflesh, Night of the Ultimate Mosh.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Got to have that. Not any Nazem album. You know, I know I said Inhale, Exhale. I mean, that's just whatever. It's
I forgot Rotten Sound Exit too.
yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, it's a classic. That's a classic. Cool.
There's
cool.
a lot of good stuff, man.
Oh, yeah, man. Well, Keith, thanks for coming on, man.
oh, for sure.
You know, is there anything else you want to plug? You doing anything, or you like any breweries or
Yeah,
any places, any record stores people should check out?
I wish I had some artistic endeavors that I could say, check me out at this spot. But no, I'm pretty much just.
I got
just
you. I got
teach.
you a gift, man.
Oh,
Well, I want to interrupt and say, after listening to you guys talk and learning that you, Keith, you had the club
Yeah.
at the school, I'm going to, when the mics turn off, invite you and convince you to do vinyl night at the bookstore. But it'll be like Metal 101.
cool.
So you'll host it. This is only if you say yes.
Yeah, we already got it
You'll
all
host
planned out for
You'll
you.
have the album list.
Wallace,
so
you're
we'll
not
get our
invited.
hands on all the albums you list, and it'll be like 2 to 4 hours of just whatever you say is a good introduction to this genre of music.
I like it.
Yeah, and anybody that wants to come listen, come
That's
listen.
great responsibility, and yeah, awesome.
So I'd like to pitch that. Keep an eye out.
But Keith, I got you a home wrecker album,
Awesome, killer.
Circle of Death. Some
You
good old
trying to
hardcore.
say something with
And
that?
I feel like it's friendmas, Joe, because I also brought you
Oh.
a gift for having me on. I bought this at Rasputin in San Francisco a couple years ago.
some Godflesh.
And I haven't listened to it in a while, and I thought I would say thank you for having me on
Yeah,
to talk
thanks,
about metal.
dude.
And that gift gives the givee regress.
Yeah, that's the most symbolic. Look at that. That's a crazy album cover. Is that? I don't know who that is.
That's the Shrouded Tour.
Neil Bergdahl would flip out for that album right now.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's big Godflesh dude.
Okay, real quick, Wallace. Are you going to start a podcast?
Oh yeah, it's gonna happen.
And what's going on with that? Let everybody know.
Pro wrestling podcast about everything, new content, current events, anything that's going on, anything that's pro wrestling. You can talk about whatever. As a child, right now, 15 years ago, it doesn't matter. It's gonna be very informative, very fun, and yeah, we're gonna drop elbows on these bitches.
There we go. There we go. Keith, thanks for coming out. Sretton, thanks for the awesome quality production. Wallace, thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me and making me come.
Yeah, you're welcome. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Adios. I'm musically meditated.
That's right.
I'm musically meditated. That's right. I'm musically meditated.